Sir Alec, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. It's also a pleasure to hear from the Petitions Committee, and I'd like to thank the member for North Ayrshire and Arran for her fantastic outlining of the petitioners. 110,000 of them across the country, some of them here today in the public gallery, led by Paul and the other campaigners who've really driven so hard to get us to where we are today, not just this debate in Parliament, not just the private members' bill that I introduced, but actually seeing that consultation be brought forward by the government, and that very much is to be welcomed. Would like to begin by thanking honourable members from across the chamber, the member for South Basildon and East Thurrock, from Newport West, from Southend East and Rochford, the chair of the CATS APPG, the member for Paisley and Renfrewshire South, and the members for Southport, amongst others, contributed in, I thought, a really valuable way to this debate. And it is without doubt that the breadth and strength of those contributions have demonstrated why this issue of licensed animal shelters and rescue centres matters so deeply to communities right across the country. Now, it might be highly unusual to have the Shadow Transport Secretary speaking in a debate on DEFRA, but I requested this one personally, given the fact that the incident that has been referred to and actually sparked off this position happened in my own constituency at Craighill. Many members will be aware of that and have made a reference to this horrible and tragic case. The appalling discovery of dozens of animals found dead at the property, and a property presenting itself as a rehoming centre. Yes, some animals taken back alive. Some had to have, even when they were taken alive, had to have the most horrendous operations done to them, including one having to have its eyes removed. It was so badly maltreated. I was inundated with correspondence from my own constituents and from people across the country, determined to see this, to see high standards brought in for this sector and proper, meaningful oversight delivered. And for those 2,600 of my constituents, more than any other constituency in the country who responded to this petition, thank you very much. You're the reasons we are where we are today. They are the reason I brought my private members' bill for establishing a licence regime on animal shelters forwards, because only by setting clear standards, but also crucially, as members have said, by having them properly enforced, can we actually protect animals. That's why I'm determined that, hopefully, with the government's consultation coming forward soon, and I look forward to hearing a few more details from the Minister in her response, and I do very much welcome its inclusion in the animal welfare strategy, that we arrive at a licensing regime that puts animal welfare at its heart, one that clamps down on malpractice and bad actors, while protecting and supporting the many kind-hearted individuals and organisations, from small individuals right through to some of our largest national charities, who provide safe, caring and responsible environments for animals, often animals, Mr Chairman, in real need. We have heard passionate speeches from right across the House, exactly in support of those small institutions, often in individual institutions in members' constituencies as well. And I'm heartened by the depth of experience and expertise that exists within the sector to help us get this licensing regime right as well. And I'd like to place on record my thanks to the RSPCA, Dogs Trust, Cats Protection, Battersea Dogs Home, the Association of Dogs and Cats Homes, the Far Place Animal Rescue, and so many others for their outstanding work and leadership in this area. I obviously have to pay tribute to Paul Watkinson, whose dogged determination to protect animal welfare and to ensure that high standards are going to be there across the board. He also deserves recognition in this House, as do local campaigners like Save a Paw in my constituency. The problem that has become painfully clear, though, is that, as the member for Southend East and Southend East and Rochford said, that anyone, regardless of their experience or indeed their intention, can put up a sign and call themselves an animal rescue centre or a shelter or rehoming centre. They will not face routine inspection, will not be subject to monitoring, and will not be required to apply for any form of licence at the moment. The consequences of that gap in oversight are as clear as they are troubling. It undermines public confidence in the integrity of the sector. It places intolerable pressure on reputable charities already facing additional costs. really intolerable pressure when they're trying to get on with their meaningful work. And most importantly, it results in animals suffering, not only the dogs and cats, but horses and other animals that have been mentioned as well. And yet we know that it does not have to be this way. As we have heard from Scotland, a licensing regime provided a clear bulwark against malpractice and has been in place since 2021. In Wales, as one of the honourable members mentioned, the government has made plain their intention to move in the same direction, and therefore it's vital that England, currently an outlier, moves in the same direction too. That position, the position as we are at the moment, is clearly not sustainable. And there is, I think, a clear advantage in addressing this issue now. As we are set about fixing this problem before us, we aren't starting from scratch, as honourable members have mentioned. We can draw directly from the experience of those who've already gone before us to get it right. Because I've spoken to many of the animal welfare charities, those based in Scotland, who are going through the legislation and want to see updates now. We can help get it right. We can get it even better here than they've already managed to achieve. And I think that's what's so important and why now is such an important time to act. It's in that vein it's important to recognise that many rescue and rehoming centres are already operating to the highest of standards. A significant number subscribe to the Association of Dogs and Cats Own Voluntary Code. This is a gold standard framework developed over many years with considerable care, expertise and sector-wide input. And I'm sure the Minister will look closely at them and work constructively with them and the wider sector to ensure that this policy is properly taken forward. The sector itself shows at its very best what good looks like. That task before us is to ensure that those standards are applied right across the board and fairly, so that animals from wherever they are get that gold standard of treatment. Now, my honourable friend from South Basildon and East Thurrock and the honourable member for Paisley and Renfrewshire South mentioned another very important aspect of this as well, which is that for licensing to succeed, it must be proportionate, but also, crucially, properly enforced. One message I've heard repeatedly from across the sector is that regulation without enforcement is no regulation at all. Clear standards must be matched by trained inspectors, adequate local authority resourcing, and a system that allows concerns to be acted on before situations deteriorate into crisis, as it clearly did in my own constituency. Any effective system must reflect the reality of modern rescue and rehoming. That includes foster-based rescues, online rehoming operations, and organisations facilitating rehoming more broadly. The ADC 8 standards are excellent, and many responsible rescues have rightly adopted them, but a voluntary system alone will always leave gaps where rogue operators simply opt out. And that's why I'm so welcoming of the government's commitment to consult on a licensing regime for rehoming organisations. But that consultation must now be followed by real clarity. The sector has been ready to engage for many years. What it needs now is a timetable, a clear scope and reassurances that wildlife rescues will not be left outside of any framework, alongside support for smaller organisations during any transition. And so I'll end on this point. What happened in my constituency last year isn't just deeply disturbing, it is a crime, and the man who was arrested for it has recently pled guilty and is now awaiting sentencing, which is I'm glad that he will be brought to justice. But this has galvanised campaigners, charities and members across this House to work together to ensure that this issue receives the attention it deserves. There is clearly, Mr Chairman, a broad consensus across Parliament, across the sector and across the devolved administrations as well. The case for licensing is well made, but what is now required is genuine action. Animals entering rescue and rehoming centres are, by definition, often already the most vulnerable. Many have been abandoned, neglected or mistreated before. The very least we owe them is a system that keeps them safe and properly cared for and protected by those whose care they are put into with clear and enforceable standards. I therefore urge the Government to ensure that England, when it comes to safeguarding animal welfare, embarks on a structured rollout of a licensing regime that is proportionate, inclusive and centred on animal welfare, regardless of the size of the organisation involved, at the earliest opportunity. The dogs of Crays, in order to ensure that the dogs at Crays Hill didn't die in vain and we can prevent any other tragedies in the future. Thank you, Mr.